Hello, as I think I mentioned in the last video, I am doing an essay on sophism at the minute. So the question is, in what sense are the sophists both humanists and nihilists? So recently I've been doing a lot more reading around sophism, and I've been watching a lot of videos and listening to some audiobooks about the sophistical movement, I guess. And I'm just going to talk through, I guess, some of the biographical information surrounding the sophists, but then also maybe go into some of their ideas. Well, definitely go into some of their ideas. I'm not sure if I'm going to go into ideas in relation to the question, because I just want to basically make sure that I've got their ideas down, or at least the sophists that I've studied, I've got their ideas concreted, for lack of a better term. So, the sophists were a bunch of ancient Greek philosophers from around about the 4th or 5th century BC, and they were so there was the pluralists and the atomists, which were interested in looking at the objective world and finding truths about the objective world, because they believed that truth resided in objectivity, that there was perhaps a simple or singular scientific explanation we could use to explain the origins of the world around us and the current state of affair of the world around us. But they didn't focus all on the individual, whereas the sophists did. They were much more focused on individual experience and perception. So Plato in the Theaetetus makes produces a Socratic dialogue between Socrates and Theaetetus, and Theaetetus is essentially taking a Protagorean route. So Protagoras argued that knowledge is perception. Okay, so, and by knowledge we mean something that is absolutely certain. So it's a fact, it's true. Because because uncertain knowledge would be a belief, essentially. I mean, maybe you can have a belief that is knowledge and that it correlates with the external world, but the sophists would say that you can't actually, Gorgias would say that you can't actually have true knowledge. There are only beliefs, okay, and the beliefs are altered based on rhetoric and persuasion. So the purpose of philosophy essentially is to change people's minds, not proportion to anything objective, but proportional to arguments and rhetoric. Protagoras did think that there was knowledge. Okay, so he equated knowledge to perception, as I've already said. So what this means is that the way the world is for you is the way it is for you. That's the way the world is. Okay? And the way the world is for me is the way the world is for me. That's the way it is. And what this does, obviously, because people have different perceptions of the world, sometimes their perceptions of the world are conflicting. So say a colourblind person perceives, is unable to perceive the colour brown and perceives a tree trunk as being yellow, right? So the tree trunk to them is yellow, so that's the way the tree trunk is, okay? Whereas the tree trunk to me is brown because I can perceive brown. So that's the way it is, for me. But also what Protagoras does is he doesn't think that things in themselves have a nature, which is quite interesting. So there's an argument in the Theaetetus as well, which talks about the wind being hot and cold, or warm and cold, simultaneously. So I perceive the wind to be warm, you might perceive the wind to be cold. Okay, and that's contingent upon our experience of the wind, upon our phenomenology interacting with the noumena, or whatever you want to call it, the external reality in and of itself. Okay, so the thing in itself is something, obviously, but the way we perceive it isn't the way it actually is. Okay? Because it doesn't actually have a nature. The only thing that gives it a nature is us. because man is the measure of all things. So the way man perceives things is the way that they are, okay? Or the way that they are to that man. It's quite hard to use language to explain this because there does seem to be a contradiction there. Because you can't... Man is the measure of all things essentially means that the way that man sees something is the way it is, but then the way something is, if that thing doesn't have a nature at all, cannot be. Because for something to be, it has to have some kind of nature, it has to have some kind of property or attribute to it. And maybe it's the case that we can't actually experience that attribute, because that is the thing in itself, and by means of, I don't know, biological restrictions, we can only perceive things through the senses that we have, and through our own minds and our perceptual framework. We can't escape from that. We can't step outside of it and see things as they actually are. And there's a Kantian link here as well. So Kant, I think his theory is called transcendental idealism. So this posits a distinction between noumena and phenomena. So the noumena, as I've already said, is the thing itself. The phenomena is our perception of the thing. Okay, and what Kant thinks is that we can look at a noumena, we can look at something in the external world. We don't experience it as a noumena, we experience it as a phenomena. And what happens is that our minds can represent the noumena to us. So when we don't see the world, we see almost a creation of the world, something that we have created in our own minds, that was perhaps catalyzed, or that the objects in themselves was a catalyst for creating within ourselves, which is very interesting because that does in some ways support this sophistical idea that we can't actually know the external world, or we can't experience the external world. We can only experience our experience of the external world. But Kant wouldn't go as far to say that the world in itself doesn't exist. I mean, maybe he would say that we can't know whether the world exists, which is interesting. Yeah. So I guess we can say that, in that sense, the Sophists are nihilists because they reject the idea of objective meaning. They reject the idea of objective truth. They make everything to do with the individual. But simultaneously, they're not nihilists because they don't reject everything. They can't reject everything. They don't reject individual experience. And that surely is a thing. The fact that you can experience yourself means that you can experience the world in some ways. Because you're part of the world. You're part of existence. Therefore, things do exist. So there's one contradiction with the Sophists. Right. And the Sophists are also humanists, in many ways, but also some ways not, because they have a lot of contradicting views. Man is the measure of all things, man is the centre of reality, and this is about to cut out. So anyway, thank you for watching.